When the police called, Elise Marlowe thought first of a car accident. Had something happened to Nathan on his commute? She didn't think of an affair until she heard the detective's voice tighten over the words, "Mrs. Marlowe, your husband's name has come up in connection with an ongoing investigation." She stood in the kitchen, the kettle screeching on the stove. Their home smelled like burnt toast and wet dog. Elise turned off the flame with a trembling hand and listened. A woman, someone Nathan had been consulting with on late nights, was missing. Her name was Camille Reyes. Elise vaguely remembered her. Sharp cheekbones, an easy laugh, one of Nathan's many work contacts. Nathan didn't come home that night, or the next. His phone went dark. At first, Elise told herself the obvious. Maybe he was helping the police. Maybe he was in shock. Maybe there was an explanation. For years, she'd believed him when he said he was just busy. When he came, home late, smelling of whiskey and some floral cologne she didn't wear. She hadn't asked questions. She hadn't wanted to. Now, all she had were questions. In the days that followed, Elise became a reluctant participant in her own investigation. Camille's sister, a rail-thin woman with bloodshot eyes, came knocking. "You knew?" she accused. "No," Elise said, not sure what she was denying. Detective Whalen, too, seemed skeptical of her ignorance. "Sometimes spouses notice things subconsciously," he said during one interview. His voice was soft, almost pitying. "Changes in routine, finances, behavior. Hadn't there been changes?" Elise thought back. Nathan had bought new shirts. He'd been protective of his phone. He'd seemed lighter somehow, like a man carrying a secret that made him feel alive. Was it Camille? Nathan returned on the fifth night. Elise woke to find him sitting at the foot of the bed, head in his hands. "I didn't hurt her," he said, before she could speak. "I loved her." The words settled over her like ash. Worse than murder, somehow. "You loved her?" Elise whispered. "I never meant for it to happen. It just..." He exhaled shakily. "It just did." He told her everything. The affair had lasted 6 months. Camille had been threatening to tell Elise, to expose everything, to blow up his life. The night she disappeared, they'd fought. He left her in the parking lot of a grim diner off the highway. "Alive," he insisted. "I didn't kill her." He said it again and again, as if repetition could erase doubt. Elise listened, cold and still. The weight of his lies pressed down on her chest until she struggled to breathe. Somewhere, deep in her stomach, something darker flickered, not just grief or rage, but a cruel satisfaction. He was terrified now. Over the next few weeks, Elise became two people. Publicly, she stood by Nathan, offering the correct grieving wife expressions. She attended interviews with lawyers, sat stiffly beside him as he repeated his story. Privately, she ransacked his study, hunting for the truth he hadn't told her. She found the burner phone in a locked drawer, a slim, traitorous device filled with text messages. "I can't do this anymore. You have to tell her. I love you. Even if you're too much of a coward to leave." There was a photo, too. Camille, smiling in their kitchen, holding the coffee mug Elise had bought on their honeymoon in Maui. The betrayal bloomed anew, raw and hot. Elise thought of smashing the phone, of confronting him, of leaving. Instead, she copied the messages, every last one. The investigation stagnated. Camille's body was never found. Public interest faded. Nathan kept his job, somehow. The firm was discreet. And life, in the way of all tragedies, began to scab over. But nothing between them healed. Elise moved through the house like a ghost, speaking only when necessary. Nathan tried at first to reach her, bringing flowers, cooking dinner, offering pathetic apologies that collapsed under the weight of what he'd done. "Say something, Elise," he pleaded one night, kneeling beside her chair. "Yell at me. Throw something. Don't just disappear." She looked at him then. Really looked. A man hollowed out by guilt and fear and still, somehow, hope. "I don't know if I want to forgive you," she said quietly. "I don't know if I can." He pressed his forehead to her knee. "I'll wait," he said. "I'll do anything." "Will you?" she thought. "Will you confess if you're guilty? Would you face prison, face shame, for me?" For her? She said nothing. She let him cry. Months later, Camille's car was found submerged in a river 2 towns over. No body inside, no clear answers. The police closed the case as suspicious circumstances, but no charges were filed. Nathan poured all his energy into rebuilding their marriage. Therapy sessions, weekend getaways, small, desperate kindnesses. Elise smiled sometimes. She kissed him sometimes. She let him believe they were healing. And yet, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, when Nathan left his laptop open, Elise uploaded the copied messages to an anonymous email and hit send to Camille's sister, to the police, to Nathan's boss. Not revenge. Not exactly. Just the truth. Whatever came next, she would not be a silent partner in his lies. Ending. The story closes on Elise sitting alone at the kitchen table, the kettle screeching again. Outside, the trees were bare, stripped for winter. Whether Nathan would stay, whether she even wanted him to, that was still unwritten. But for the first time in months, she felt the smallest flutter of peace. She would not forgive easily. She might never fully forgive. But she would decide, for herself, what came next. Just a tightening of the air around them, a subtle shift that only Elise noticed, like how animals sensed earthquakes before they struck. Nathan came home later that evening, oblivious at first. He set his keys in the bowl, kissed her cheek. She smelled panic under his cologne, a faint, sour edge. He opened the fridge, the mail, a bottle of wine. Routine, almost desperate. It wasn't until he checked his phone, standing at the counter, that the color drained from his face. Elise watched over the rim of her tea mug, her heart a slow, heavy drum. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, reading. His hands shook. He dropped the phone like it burned. "Elise," he said, turning toward her. His face was naked with fear. "Something's happening. Someone sent everything to the cops." Someone. She tilted her head as if curious. Who would do that? Nathan stared at her, searching for the woman he'd married, the one who would have closed ranks with him without hesitation. But Elise had become unknowable, a stranger. Maybe she always had been. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. Nathan flinched. Outside, 2 unmarked cars idled by the curb. Elise could see the vague shapes of men moving through the evening mist. "I didn't kill her," Nathan said again, his voice cracking. "You have to believe me." Elise rose from her chair. She smoothed her sweater, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Calm, composed. "I believe you," she said softly. And maybe, in some dark part of her, she almost did. Or maybe it didn't matter anymore. The doorbell rang again, longer this time. Nathan didn't move, frozen like a cornered animal. Elise stepped around him and opened the door. Detective Whalen stood there, grave-eyed, badge in hand. "Mrs. Marlowe," he said, "we need to speak to your husband." Nathan made a low sound, something between a groan and a plea. Elise didn't look at him. She only nodded and stepped aside. The officers moved past her, their presence filling the house like smoke. She heard Nathan's voice behind her, raised, desperate, Bargaining. She heard the click of handcuffs. The front door swung shut with a final thud. 1 week later, Elise sat alone in the lawyer's office, a thin rain tapping against the windows. Nathan's preliminary hearing had been set. No murder charges yet. Just obstruction, falsifying evidence, tampering. The DA was still building the case. The lawyer, a wiry woman with tired eyes, slid a folder across the table. "Your husband's accounts," she said. "You need to be prepared. Divorce is inevitable. He's not going to bounce back from this." Elise thumbed through the folder absently. Bank statements, credit card bills, hotel receipts. All the proof of the life Nathan had led without her. "You have options," the lawyer said gently. "You can rebuild." Rebuild. The word sounded like both a promise and a punishment. Outside the office, a young couple darted across the sidewalk, laughing under a shared umbrella. Elise watched them hollowly, feeling older than her 42 years. She thought about Camille Reyes, about the love Nathan claimed to feel, the anger that had driven him to the edge. She thought about the girl's sister, still grieving, still searching for answers. The world was full of people who would never get closure. Maybe justice wasn't clean. Maybe it was just messy, uneven shards you picked up and lived with. Final. Scene. Back home, Elise packed slowly. A single suitcase, a few essentials. No drama, no letters, no goodbye notes. She left the house key on the kitchen table beside a mug, the Maui one, that she carefully cracked with a hammer before she left. Just a hairline fracture, almost invisible. A reminder. When she closed the front door behind her, she didn't look back. The future loomed, uncertain, unscripted, hers. And for the first time, Elise felt something dangerous and freeing uncurl in her chest. Hope. The news barely made a ripple. A 2-inch column buried on page 6 of the local paper. No charges filed in Reyes' disappearance. Nathan Marlowe had cut a plea deal. Obstruction of justice, 2 years probation, mandatory therapy, fines. No prison time. No murder conviction. Camille's body was never found. Without it, there wasn't enough. The story ended not with a bang, but a tired, bureaucratic sigh. Elise. She lived now in a small apartment above a bookstore in a nearby town. The owner, a wiry man named Greg with kind eyes and a limp, had offered her the place in exchange for helping run the store's weekend events. She liked the work. It was clean, quiet. She liked the feel of fresh paper, the way readers spoke to each other in hushed, reverent tones. Some nights, after the store closed, Elise would sit by the wide window, sipping wine and reading until the words blurred. She dated once or twice, kind men, uncomplicated. But she wasn't in a hurry to stitch herself to anyone else. Some wounds needed to breathe. She never told anyone, not even Greg, the full story of Nathan. Sometimes she wasn't sure if she even knew it herself. In the stillest hours of the night, when the city was a hum beneath her, she would dream of Camille Reyes, dream of rivers and missing things, of unanswered questions swirling just beyond her grasp. And sometimes she dreamed of Nathan, too. But in those dreams, his face was always turned away. Nathan. Nathan lived alone now, renting a sterile condo near the corporate offices where he still worked, reduced in title and salary, a shadow of the man he had once been. At company functions, people would murmur after he passed. New hires didn't know the full story, only that he was that guy, the one with the scandal in his past. He saw a therapist twice a week. Anger management, accountability work. He said the right words in the right rooms. He meditated. He journaled. But some rot you couldn't scrub clean. He emailed Elise once, a stilted, formal thing. "Hope you're well. I miss you." She didn't reply. A chance encounter. One gray afternoon, about a year after she left, Elise walked out of a coffee shop carrying a stack of books and bumped into Nathan on the sidewalk. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. He looked older, thinner. His face was a map of regret. Elise adjusted the books in her arms. Her heart thudded once, hard, and then settled. "Hi," Nathan said finally, voice rasped raw. "You look good." "You too," Elise lied politely. They stood there, two ghosts tangled in the living world. He opened his mouth as if to say something more, an apology, a plea, but she lifted a hand, stopping him. Some things were better left unspoken. Instead, she offered him a small, sad smile. "Take care of yourself, Nathan," she said, and she meant it. She turned and walked away, feeling the weight of his gaze on her back, but lighter than she had in years. Final lines. As Elise rounded the corner, the wind lifted her hair and scattered, the scent of fresh rain through the streets. The past clung to her like a second skin, but it no longer defined her. She was still learning, still mending, still becoming. And somewhere, in the deep bruised chambers of her heart, something new was growing. Not forgiveness, not forgetting. Something tougher, something brighter, freedom. She kept seeing Nathan's face, not pleading, not angry, just hollow, as if some essential part of him had been carved out. She tried to shake it off. She buried herself in books, busy work, late-night TV. But around midnight, the buzzer to her apartment crackled. She froze. No one visited at this hour. Another buzz. Longer this time. Urgent. She crossed to the intercom. "Who is it?" she asked, her voice tighter than she intended. Static. Then a man's voice, not Nathan's, unfamiliar, low. "Package for Elise Marlowe." She hesitated. Her instincts screamed. "Leave. It outside," she said. No response. She stayed frozen at the door, heart hammering, until long minutes passed. Finally, she cracked the door open just a few inches. There was no one in the hallway, just a plain manila envelope lying on the welcome mat. No postage, no markings. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. Inside were photographs, grainy, blown up, images of Nathan and Camille. Together. Not the polished, happy moments she'd once found on his burner phone. No. These were darker. One photo showed Nathan gripping Camille's arm in a shadowed parking lot. Another, Camille turning away, clearly crying. The last one, Camille alone, in her car, her face caught in a look of raw, terrified defiance. Stamped on the back of each photo was a date. The night Camille disappeared, and scrawled on a scrap of paper tucked into the envelope, a single line. "You don't know everything." The days after. Elise carried the photos in her bag for days, unable to throw them away, unable to show them to anyone. Were they real? Had Nathan lied about that night, too? Or was someone trying to rattle her? She thought of Camille's sister, Detective Whalen. Even Nathan himself. Maybe the story Elise had chosen to believe, that Nathan had been weak, selfish, cruel but not murderous, wasn't the whole truth. Maybe the man she left behind wasn't just a betrayer of hearts, but something far, far worse. A new choice. Elise knew two things. She could turn the envelope over to the police and plunge herself back into the investigation, the lawyers, the press, the endless bleeding of old wounds. Or she could destroy it, burn it, choose ignorance, choose peace. Both options felt like a kind of death. Final scene. On a cool, windy evening, Elise stood at the edge of a rocky overlook, staring down at the churning river below. She held the envelope in her hand. The photos fluttered slightly in the breeze. A car passed behind her on the road, headlights sweeping over her like a pale accusation. For a moment, she thought she heard Camille's voice in the wind, or maybe just the echo of her own battered conscience. Elise closed her eyes, and then, very carefully, she dropped the envelope into the river. The photos scattered like broken birds, disappearing into the dark water. Closing lines. She could never know the full truth. Maybe no one ever could. But she could choose not to be trapped by it anymore. As she turned away from the river and walked into the gathering night, Elise knew one thing with absolute certainty. Some ghosts you buried yourself. Some you learned to live with. And some you simply let drift away. The end. Elise thought it would feel cleaner. Final. But as she turned back toward her car, a figure detached from the shadows across the road. Her pulse kicked hard. It was Detective Whalen, hands in his coat pockets, watching her quietly, as if he'd been there for some time. "You always pick the rivers," he said, voice neutral. "You know, people think water erases things. It doesn't." Elise tightened her grip on her car keys. "What are you doing here?" "Following up," he said, his mouth twisted in a humorless smile. "You disappeared after Nathan's case wrapped up. Figured you might still be sitting on something." "I'm not," Elise said. "Too fast. Too defensive." Whalen's gaze drifted toward the river, where the envelope had already vanished. "Funny," he said. "That looked a lot like evidence." She didn't answer. He sighed, stepping closer. Not threatening, just tired. "Look, Mrs. Marlowe, you think walking away closes this, I get it. But people like Nathan, they don't just stop." "You don't know him," Elise said. Whalen gave her a long, pitying look. "Neither do you." The words hung there between them, heavy as stone. Finally, he pulled something from his pocket, a card, and pressed it into her palm. "My number," he said, "when you're ready to stop lying to yourself." Then he turned and walked away into the night, his figure swallowed by mist and distance. Later, that night, Elise sat on the edge of her narrow bed, the detective's card resting on her nightstand. She stared at it for a long time. In her mind's eye, she saw Nathan again. Not the weeping, broken man she'd left behind, but the other version, the one gripping Camille's arm. The one full of rage and control. Had she mistaken weakness for remorse? Had she convinced herself he was pitiful because it was easier than admitting he might be dangerous? She remembered the tiny hairline crack she'd left in the Maui mug, the one she smashed before walking away. Sometimes the cracks were invisible, until everything shattered at once. New decision. This time, Elise didn't flinch. This time, she picked up the phone. When Whalen answered on the second ring, she said, "Only, I'm ready to talk. No turning back." Alternate final scene. Months later, Nathan Marlowe would find himself pulled back into a courtroom. Not for obstruction this time, but something darker. Because Elise had finally stopped protecting him. Because trust, once broken, sometimes demands something colder than forgiveness. Sometimes it demands justice. Closing line. The past didn't drift away on a river, it circled back. It demanded reckoning, and Elise, at last, was no longer afraid to face it. Nathan knew. Elise didn't know how, but he did. The first sign was the call. No number, a blank screen. She let it go to voicemail. Later, listening to it in the dark, she heard Nathan's voice, calm, composed, terrifying in its casualness. "You think you're safer without me?" he said. "You're not. They'll turn on you, Elise. You've got no idea what you're stepping into." Click, nothing else. Detective Whalen's office. Elise sat stiffly across from Whalen the next morning, the windows behind him fogged by rain. "We can get you protection," he said. "Temporary restraining order. Relocation if it gets serious." "But no arrest yet," Elise said bitterly. "No charges." Waylon grimaced. "Not enough yet. The photos help, but without a witness, without a body—" He trailed off. "We need you to testify. You're the one who can put him at the scene. Tie him to Camille's final hours." Elise felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. She was so tired, so deeply tired of being the last one left trying to stitch meaning out of ruins. But she nodded once. "I'll do it." The escalation. The next few weeks were hell. Small things at first. Her tires slashed, someone breaking into the bookstore but taking nothing. Then, her bank account hacked. Her name leaked anonymously to a trashy tabloid. Spurned wife targets executive in revenge plot, complete with a blurry photo of her leaving Waylon's office. Nathan was playing a long game. No open threats, no direct moves, just chaos, fear, doubt. The breaking point. One night after closing the store, Elise found a manila envelope tucked into the doorframe. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a copy of her mother's old hospital bills. A reminder of the debt Nathan had once helped her erase when they first married. A reminder that she owed him in ways she'd conveniently forgotten. At the bottom, scrawled in black ink, "Without me, you're nothing. Elise's choice." She stood, there in the doorway, shaking with rage, the rain soaking through her sweater. Nathan wasn't just trying to scare her, he was trying to erase her, turn her back into the frightened, grateful, dependent woman he thought he had married. But he had miscalculated, because Elise wasn't afraid anymore. Not of him, not of the truth, not of standing alone. She called Waylon that night and gave her full sworn statement. Dates, times, emails, conversations, all of it, enough to bury Nathan Marlowe. Climactic scene. The morning of the grand jury hearing, Elise walked up the courthouse steps alone. No lawyers flanking her, no cameras waiting. Just a gray sky above, heavy with the threat of rain. Nathan was already there, standing near the entrance, his posture loose, almost casual. Their eyes locked. For a moment, he smiled. The same charming smile that had once won her over all those years ago, but it didn't touch his eyes. There, in the deep hollows of his gaze, Elise saw the truth, naked and ugly. Nathan wasn't sorry. Nathan had never been sorry, only sorry he got caught. She turned away from him without a word and stepped inside, ready to testify. Closing lines. Outside. The first drops of rain began to fall, beating on the cold courthouse steps like tiny glass marbles. Inside, Elise took the stand. Her voice, when it came, was steady, clear, unbreakable. End. Part 4. The courtroom was cold. Not physically. The air was the same stale, recycled hum as anywhere else, but cold in the way places become when heavy things happen inside them. Elise sat stiff-backed in the witness chair, a microphone tilted toward her. Nathan sat across the room at the defense table, flanked by his attorney. He wore a dark suit, expensive but ill-fitting now that he'd lost so much weight. His hands were folded neatly on the table. His mouth was a flat, hard line, but his eyes, God, his eyes, never left her. Direct examination. Waylon's assistant. DA paced slowly in front of her, asking careful, clear questions. "Did you see Mr. Marlowe with Camille Reyes the night she disappeared?" "Yes," Elise said, voice steady. "I found photographs hidden in our home. Later I saw them arguing in the parking garage attached to his office." "How would you describe his demeanor?" Elise hesitated just a moment. The courtroom seemed to lean closer. "Controlled," she said finally. "Angry underneath, but smiling on the surface." Nathan smiled faintly at that, as if proud of it. Elise swallowed down her disgust. Did Mr. Marlowe ever admit involvement in Ms. Reyes's disappearance? "No," Elise said. But he lied about knowing her, about a lot of things. And when I confronted him, he told me to be careful who I chose to protect. The DA nodded grimly. The jury scribbled furiously on their notepads. Cross-examination, Nathan's attorney was slim, well-dressed, and full of knives hidden under honeyed words. "Mrs. Marlowe," he said, "you're here today because you're angry at my client, isn't that right?" "No," Elise said. "I'm here because it's the truth. But you're in the middle of a divorce proceeding, correct? We're already divorced. And yet you stand to gain financially if Mr. Marlowe is convicted, don't you?" "No," Elise said flatly. "I stand to gain nothing, except maybe peace." The attorney frowned, sensing the jury siding with her. "You destroyed evidence, didn't you?" He pressed. "That envelope you threw into the river?" The room tensed. Whalen sat forward, ready to object, but Elise beat him to it. "Yes," she said. "I did, out of fear. But I came back. I'm here now, telling you everything." She didn't flinch, didn't look at Nathan. She kept her gaze locked on the jury, on the truth, like a swimmer fixing their eyes on the distant shore. The Ayah verdict, days later. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. Elise didn't attend the reading. She sat in a quiet diner 2 towns over, nursing bad coffee and worse nerves, her phone face down on the table. When it finally buzzed, she let it ring. Twice before answering. Whalen's voice was gruff, but almost gentle. "Guilty," he said. "On multiple counts. Evidence tampering, witness intimidation, and conspiracy in connection to Reyes's disappearance. No murder conviction, no body. But it was enough. Nathan would be behind bars for a long, long time. A trembling breath escaped. Elise's lungs. Relief. Sorrow. Something deeper that had no name. "Thank you," she whispered. "You did it," Whalen said. "You saved yourself." Epilogue. Months later, Elise stood by the river again, the same spot where she once tried to erase her doubts. This time she brought no envelopes, no secrets, only herself. She wore no makeup, no armor. The late afternoon sun caught in her hair, gilding it gold. She thought about Nathan sometimes, not with rage, not even with sorrow, just as a scar you learn to live with. She had started a new job, counseling survivors, helping them piece themselves back together. She wasn't perfect, she wasn't healed, but she was here, still breathing, still trying, still moving forward. Final lines. As Elise turned from the river, she didn't look back. The past had already taken enough from her. This time she was walking towards something, not running from it. Alternate epilogue. Ghosts. That follow, one rainy morning, almost a year after the trial, a letter arrived for Elise. No return address, no stamp, hand-delivered to the bookstore. The handwriting was unmistakable. Nathan's, crisp, slanted slightly, to the right. A little too neat, like someone trying too hard to seem in control. Elise sat behind the counter for a long time just staring at it, her hand hovering over the envelope like it might catch fire. Finally, she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. No greeting, no apology, just this. "You think you won, but I live inside you now. Every choice you make, every man you trust, every shadow you flinch from. That's me. You don't get free, Elise. You just get older." She finished reading, folded the letter calmly, and set it aside. No rage boiled up, no tears, only a deep, settled weariness. Nathan wanted her afraid, wanted her to be a prisoner of the past. The same cage he'd lived in his whole life, but he underestimated her. Again. Final scene. That evening, Elise built a small fire behind her apartment building, in a rusted old barrel left behind by previous tenants. She fed the letter into the flames, watching the edges curl and blacken, the words vanish into smoke and ash. Above her, the stars blinked faintly in the polluted city sky, indifferent and ancient. For the first time in months, she slept, dreamlessly. Closing words. The ghosts would visit. They always did. But they could not tell her who she was anymore. Only she could do that, and Elise Marlowe had decided she was not anyone's ghost story, not anymore. Postscript. Small openings. Spring came late that year. The city dragged its heels out of winter like an exhausted animal. The trees reluctant to bud, the mornings still sharp with cold. Elise walked to work most days now. She liked the rhythm of it. The crackle of gravel underfoot. The feel of her own breath clouding in front of her. Proof she was alive. Proof she could choose her own pace. At the bookstore, things were slow but steady. Regulars came and went. College students hunting used textbooks, elderly men scanning for forgotten mysteries, young women looking for cookbooks and escape. One Tuesday afternoon, Elise was restocking a shelf when she heard the door jingle open. "Excuse me," a voice said. Low, warm, hesitant. She turned. A man stood there, maybe late 30s, with messy dark hair and a battered leather satchel slung over one shoulder. Not polished, not posturing. Just ordinary, human. He gave a sheepish smile. "I'm looking for a book on—" He hesitated. "Starting over, I guess." Something in her chest gave a small, reluctant tug. Not love, not fireworks, just recognition. A mirror held up to her own bruised heart. She smiled back. A real one, not forced. "I think we have a whole shelf for that," she said. "Come on. I'll show you." Closing lines. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't destiny. It was two broken people, still walking, still trying, meeting in the ruins and finding, maybe, the beginning of something different. Not perfect, not certain, but real. And for Elise, that was enough. Elise Marlowe's life was turned upside down when she discovered her husband Nathan's infidelity. But that was only the beginning. As she unravels the tangled web of betrayal, she uncovers darker secrets, ones that make her question everything. She thought she knew about him and about herself. In the wake of Nathan's arrest for the disappearance of a woman he once claimed to love, Elise is forced to confront a painful truth. The man she married is more than just a liar and a cheat. He may be a criminal, and the very foundation of their marriage, built on trust and shared lies, is more fragile than she ever imagined. As Elise wrestles with the pull of vengeance, the possibility of forgiveness, and the haunting grip of her past, she is left to decide. Can she ever truly move forward? Or is she doomed to be forever shaped by the shadows of those she has tried to leave behind? Echoes in the River is a gripping exploration of love, betrayal, and the unrelenting echoes of the past. A haunting portrait of a woman trying to rebuild her life, even as the ghosts of her former self threaten to pull her under.